It's August 31st, 2023. This is the best of Roqe. Hi there, welcome to episode 284 of Roqe. I'm Jian Gomeshi. Hello from Toronto, hello from Canada. Salam Dustan Aziz. Durud bar shama. Hope you're doing well wherever you are tuning in from around the world. We are on our ongoing mission to build a new audio-visual encyclopedia of Iranian diaspora identity. Today's episode is part of a Best of Roqe series we have been bringing to you for the entire month of August, where we've been looking back at some of our favorite interviews over the last 3.5 years and some of our most entertaining moments, and we've been giving them to you. We've curated our favorites, and we hope you check these conversations out, especially if you may have missed them the first time around. We're going to be bringing you brand new episodes of Roqe, starting with our season preview show next week on September 7th, and then the big launch of a new edition of Roqe on September 14th. In the meantime, our final installment of the Best of Roqe for this summer. And today on the program, we're going to revisit an interview with an Iranian global community icon who we sadly lost this summer, but who will be remembered for years to come. He was the kid from Shiraz who ascended to the heights of the most American of institutions. Dr. Firouz Naderi was well known for his rise to the top levels of NASA and his brilliant work in bringing humanity closer to Mars. But Dr. Naderi was also increasingly speaking out about the world, politics, and policy in the United States and in Iran, and sometimes feeling the sting of those who disagreed with him as a consequence. Today, we replay a very special interview with Dr. Firouz Naderi about space, about belonging, and about putting oneself out there with opinions and politics. We are coming to you on roqemedia.com. It is there that you can link to all of our platforms. We are on Spotify, on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Instagram, and CastBox. If you want to see some visuals with Roqe, switch over to our YouTube channel right now. And if you like your Roqe descriptions and bulletins in both Persian and English, check us out on Telegram at Roqe Media. And if you want to support us, which we really appreciate, we crowdsource through our Patreon page. You can become a Roqe member by going to our website, roqemedia.com, pressing the Support Us button. It takes you to our Patreon page. For a few dollars a month, you can become a Roqe member and support us through Patreon. We really appreciate that. Again, just go to our website, roqemedia.com, and press Support Us. All right, let's get started. You know, our special guest on this final edition of the Best of Roqe needs little introduction, especially for Americans and people of Iranian descent around the world. He spent recent decades managing NASA programs in pursuit of a most fundamental question: are we alone in the universe? Dr. Firouz Naderi. He was born in Iran's city of poets, Shiraz. He completed his elementary education in his hometown, then moved to Tehran for his secondary education. He immigrated to the United States after graduating from high school in the 1970s. Firouz received his doctorate from the University of Southern California in electrical engineering and joined NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in 1979 and went on to lead that unit as its director until 2016. On his retirement, NASA actually named an asteroid, Naderi 5515, in his honor. Firouz referred to the asteroid and said, "Fortunately, it will never hit the Earth." Dr. Naderi continued cooperating as a counselor with NASA as well as startups, and in his final years also worked as an instructor of the Prospective Leaders Training Center for the Iranian-American Association. He was a fellow of the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics and a recipient of a number of awards, including NASA's Outstanding Leadership Medal, the Space Technology Hall of Fame Medal, and NASA's highest award, the Distinguished Service Medal. He was also a 2005 recipient of the Ellis Island Medal of Honor, given for outstanding contributions that have enriched American society and exemplify its cultural diversity. He was most recently recognized by the American Astronautical Society and the William Randolph Lovelace II Award for outstanding contributions to space science and technology. As you may know, Dr. Firouz Naderi died earlier this summer, but his legacy surely lives on. 3 years ago on this program, Dr. Firouz Naderi joined me from Los Angeles for a feature interview about his life and his work. Here's our conversation. Hello, sir.
Hello, Jian. Thanks for that introduction. It's hard to live up to all that you said, but thank you for your generous introduction.
Firouz, it's a great honor to have you on this program. I want to ask you a question now that is either extremely naive or profound. I'm not sure which. You can decide, and perhaps it's absurd. But given that it has long been the aspiration of humankind to learn what kind of life might be out there in the cosmos or on Mars, and I know you've long been a student of this, what will we gain by finding an answer to that age-old question, are we alone in the universe or not?
Well, look, in the vastness of the universe, and to just give you a quick sense of how large the universe is, you are in Toronto. If you go to the nearest lake or nearest beach and try to pick a sand grain, a single sand grain, out of all the sand grains in the lake, that is, let's call that our sun, and then continue counting all the sand grains in the local beaches, and then when you're done, everything in South America, North America, Europe. In fact, count all the sand grains on the beaches on Earth.
Okay.
And the number of stars being other entities like our sun, is more than all the sand grains in the world. It would seem one way or the other, either we are so blessed among all these sand grains that we alone developed life here on planet Earth around the sun, or in fact you can use the argument that would be rather arrogant of us to even think that there are many more life forms. At any rate, it gives you a context for us being here on Earth. I think that's profound, knowing whether in fact we are alone in the universe or not. And even though this is not the subject of this discussion because it takes a long time, so I will avoid it, if you look at how life first arose on Earth, since it was 4.5 billion years ago, and how that happened, which is the probability is very, very low, but it did. If you find out, not in any other sand grain, but in our own little sand grain, in our solar system, there was a second place, like Mars, that independent of Earth, also developed life, then the probability that the universe is teeming with life would be exponential. So that is one of the reasons we go to Mars. But generally, Jian, I think our young people are always inspired and seek to go into math and computer science and technology, when there is something inspirational, and you can't deny that space exploration is inspirational. And throughout the years, our technology that we use in everyday life, in medicine, in assembly of machines and things like that, in GPS, they have all been helped by the fact that we have developed these technologies for space, and years later it has sort of found its way into the normal life. So the people who say, well, what does it mean to me? Even if the philosophical question that we just talked about doesn't get you, then you would give it a nod because it actually helps your life here on Earth.
Let me come back to that, because that in terms of funding, that's a big question too. But first of all, by the way, just parenthetically, listening to you, you're so into this. I know you're technically retired from NASA, but you're kind of like Michael Jordan. You retire, but then you come back. I mean, Firouz Naderi seems to have never really left NASA, and space exploration never really leaves Firouz. Would that be correct?
Yeah, it goes in your blood. First of all, I have stepped down from my full-time duty at NASA. I have not retired. You can't just turn the switch off and retire. So I'm still pretty active, as you mentioned earlier, in consulting, in back to NASA, and also with early-stage startups. So I'm still fairly active, and you're addicted to it.
Why? What is the? Can you put it into words? What's the drug that is space exploration for you?
I coach a number of young Iranian students, actually international, not only Iranian. They always ask me, we want to follow in your footsteps, and what propelled you ahead. There is only one thing I can think of over and above everything else, and that is curiosity. I think that is what drives us, the yearning to know what's around the bend, to go around the corner and see what's around the bend. I think that propels everybody. And so what keeps me engaged is that there is so much to know, and I'm so naturally curious that you always try to stay up to date, and that's what drives you.
It's interesting that you should use the word curiosity. Let me stick with the Mars missions for another couple of minutes. You were directly involved with the well-known Curiosity mission, a rover that is currently on Mars. It's doing its job. And on the NASA science website, it says that the ultimate goal of the Curiosity is human exploration of Mars. What would that look like? How could it benefit us and the universe? What does human exploration on or of Mars look like?
Well, Jian, go back to 15th century. Europe was doing well. Portugal was doing well. The known universe was known to them. And had they not been curious to try to find out what else is there, they would have never crossed the oceans and tried to go to America. And so, the rest is history. So it is within us. It is part of our human's DNA that wants to explore. And through that exploration, as I explained earlier, their life enriches. So the idea of trying to get further and further out in the universe, stems from that. Now, there are some people who say, well, if you're going to Mars because you think someday Earth would be uninhabitable, and you're going to Mars so you can have a second beachhead, and that's foolhardy. Why don't you take care of Earth? Why are you destroying Earth so that you need to go to some place else? That's never the argument. Of course we should take care of Earth first. That's the only life, the only home that we know. So Mars is not to be a substitute for Earth. So it stems first and foremost out of curiosity to push further into the universe. But we are foolish enough to someday make Earth uninhabitable, then it would give us another option. Steve Hawking said that if within 1,000 years from now humans have not found another place which they can live on aside from Earth, we will go extinct.
Let me ask the question directly. At the height of the U.S.-Soviet space race, there seemed to be this great appetite for spending when it came to space exploration. What is the case you would make today for someone who says, why is my nation putting resources into a Mars mission versus healthcare or the environment?
Sure. If you take $1 of federal government and then take a penny, 100th of it, out of that dollar, and then cut it in half, and then cut that in half, that's the budget of NASA. And so if you are, in fact, hard up for balancing the budget relative to other urgencies, I would submit to you that the war that America had with Iraq, that would fund NASA for 70 years. So I think it would be misguided, given all the benefits that I cited, to go after that quarter or 1 penny, try to save money to fund Social Security or Medicare. There are other places where I think we are spending foolishly, that if, in fact, you want to rebalance your priorities, that's where to look. It is not to gut NASA.
You talked about what people get wrong in terms of the budget when it comes to NASA. What are myths that people have about NASA? What do people get wrong about this institution?
It depends. I mean, there are conspiracy theorists abound. There are people who think that we know a lot. We've been in contact with aliens, and we are hiding that from the public.
Wait, that's so not true?
Yeah, well, let me clarify and say no, that is right. Not true. And the second thing is that, we faked the moon landing. That was all done in Hollywood studios, and we faked it. And then no matter how many times you explain it to them, they still come back to it. So there are conspiracy theories which I think do not want to learn, and I have stopped wasting my breath talking to them.
I want to shift from space into identity, but just before I do that, if you could set a mission goal for exploration without any concern for budgetary requirements or political support, what would that goal be?
Aside from human travel, which I think to Mars, which Elon Musk's bravado notwithstanding. I mean, at one time he said, we're going to go there in 2018. Then it's 2024. I don't think that's going to happen. I think sometimes between 2030, few years after that, that's a possibility. In fact, just before I left NASA, with the help of 2 colleagues, we laid out a plan to, in fact, enable, such a mission. And knowing, just what you talked about NASA budget, knowing that we can never go back to early 60s with the Cold War and, budget was no issue. We said, what if NASA budget never grows beyond what it is right now, just grows with inflation? How long will it take, and how would we sequence things to go to Mars? And it turned out to be mid-2030s. Now, is a bit more ambitious, which I think is good. I think NASA is getting too conservative. I think it needs somebody from the private sector to sort of push NASA. So I think SpaceX is really not in competition with NASA, but I think is a nice complement. They may bring it forward a little bit, but it is not in the next few years. We'll go eventually. So human to Mars is one. And the second one of my favorite is that we believe that if there is currently any kind of biology elsewhere in our solar system, the probability is the highest for a moon of Jupiter. Jupiter, unlike us that have only one moon, Jupiter has like 67, 68 moons. And one of them, Europa, has a vast ocean which is cocooned inside a shell of 20 or so kilometer ice. We believe that all the conditions for emergence of life is there for Europa, and be able to find that out, I think would be another great thing, and probably was the last mission that I worked on before I left NASA.
You were a kid from Shiraz who had a great facility for math and science, as the story goes. You came to America as a young man in the late 70s. Much of your story has been told elsewhere, and there is a great deal of pride in our diaspora that an Iranian has ascended to the celestial heights that you have. Let me ask a question this way. Is there anything about being from the East, growing up there, being Iranian, that you think helped your perspective on life and space as you were coming up in NASA?
Yeah, no, not exactly the way you asked it. First of all, to clarify, and I do not say with any false sense of being humble, there are so many, particularly among the young generation of Iranian-Americans that come here, or Iranian students that come here, that I see so much smarter than I, that I was, at their age. Is that no, I was not particularly blessed, being any more advanced than anybody else. So probably it was hard work, curiosity, and good luck that allowed me to get to where I am. So it is eminently possible for everybody else, and I think, in fact, such a mistake for America, and kudos to Canada, that has kept the doors open for Iranian students coming here to further their education. And one way or the other, I said this thing in an interview, that it is a win-win for America. Either they come and, like myself, decide to stay in this country and get absorbed in this society, which is good, or in fact they go back to their country with empathy for America and change the perception of the home country about America.
Yes. To
close the doors on Iranian students, which get accepted disproportionately at universities like Stanford and MITs and Caltech, it's just so short-sighted by the current administration that it just, frankly infuriates me.
What about that notion of hard work that you talk about, though? And not to romanticize the notion of immigrants being hardworking, et cetera, but do you think that there was an element to that you outworked those around you because of coming from somewhere else and needing to work that much harder, given the language tools and all the pedagogical approach, and having to adapt to everything in the States?
No, I think the classical picture that we have of the immigrants that try harder, it's really is there. There is you may know him, Omid Kurdestani. He was, the 10th employee at Google, and now is the executive chairman at Twitter. He gave a commencement speech at the university, and there's something that he said he stuck with me. He came here as a 14-year-old with his single mom, and he talked about how he got ahead given the mindset that you're talking about. At the beginning, you are not native, your English, if you're like in Canada or U.S., is not good enough, and you're come from a different culture, you have to adapt. All of that makes you work harder. So, but what he said that stuck with me was that he said that now, 50 years later, now that I'm well assimilated in the American culture, one thing that I tell all immigrants, that after you succeed, don't lose the mindset of an immigrant. Keep that with you, even though you don't face the same challenges as you did when you first came here. And that, mindset that he talked about, says everything.
And do you have that mindset?
I've always kept it. I think, I've always, I'm very competitive anyways, but yes, I've kept that mindset.
Tell me about, on jumping off that very point. Tell me about being a guy who has worn the emblem of, one might say, the most American of institutions on your sleeve, NASA, but who also regularly and proudly identifies as Iranian. How do those two nations coexist in you?
I refer to that as the curse and the blessing of having two countries. It is difficult. You talked a little bit about my history, my adult life, and I call my adult life beyond my high school years. And high school years, I went to a boarding Catholic high school in Tehran, and so I was sort of shielded from the society. So even when I left Iran at 18, I had not really grown up all that much in the outside world of, Iran society. But beyond that, now I've spent 95% of my life in America.
Adult life.
Adult life.
Right.
And I feel in a very strong way that I owe a sense of gratitude to two countries, one in which I was born and the other one which enabled the rest of my life. And I cannot differentiate. When people say, well, are you really an Iranian or an American? And my response has always been, once you break an egg into a bowl and then stir it, it is very hard to separate the yolk from the white. Right. And that is most people who have immigrated and have been here for a long time. So I have a sense of belonging to both. And when some people, as maybe we'll get to talk about it, they talk about, you need to vote this way or the other way. It's your duty to Iran, and forget about any sense of duty that you have to America, because after all, you're Iranian. And I said, no, I'm not Iranian. I'm Iranian-American. Right. The both go together. I have duties and sense of loyalty to Iran and sense of loyalty to America. So I'm not going to choose. I mean, no matter how much you try to press me and shame, frankly, in social media, they try to shame you into taking sides between your two identities. Yes. And I just refuse to do it. Those misguided people who insist, let them live their lives. But most of the people that I know here, they feel obligations to both countries. And there are times where there were people who are advocating that America should bomb Iran, to get rid of the current regime, which, by the way, not to politicize your show, I'm very much against. But I was very much against it. You don't bomb a nation in order to get rid of the mullahs. It's easy for me to say, sitting in Los Angeles, I know that the bomb will not drop on my head. To say, at any cost, by any means, get these people out, bomb, so 2 million people die, so what? These people, I can't say that. And then here, when people ask me to vote one way or the other, forgetting that America has environmental issue, medical issue, race issue, social security issues, and dozens of issues on which, when Americans go to poll and vote, they should keep it forefront in their mind. I'm not going to sacrifice all of that, because some people are thinking, you should only look at the next election through the lens of Iran, which I refuse to do.
Okay, you've given me a treasure chest of talking points in that one answer that I want to deconstruct and take one at a time. We'll get to the politics, but first, a couple of statements. First of all, I'm on to you. I knew you were going to, I suspected you might use your egg analogy, which I love, but I do want to say sometimes people still choose to separate the egg, even though it naturally mixes in the bowl. That still exists. To extend the metaphor perhaps further than you wish to. And the other thing I was going to say is I'm not sure if it matters. You did the percentage on how long you've been here and how long you've been in Iran. To a certain extent, Firouz John, I don't know if that actually even matters, because I didn't spend my life first half of my life in Iran, but I still feel that duality and that incredible identity and that devotion to two nations. In my case, Canada and Iran, even the UK, where I spent my early years. And I know cousins of mine or friends who've come very recently in the last 2 or 3 years or 5 years and feel that same devotion to their new country as you do, having been here for a few decades. So it's almost not about the amount of time spent, but this preternatural, this bigger than geography feeling that we develop towards a duality of cultures. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and you notice that I did not weigh my allegiances based on the number of years. I said 95% adult life here,
right,
and so forth.
Right.
So, no, I think the loyalty and a sense of belonging that you have to the two countries are not weighed by number of years that you have spent in either places. No, I was born there. When they're in my roots, my parents, my history, it's all rooted in Iran. Whether I was there for 18 years or 1800 years, that's there. So all I'm saying, it is unreasonable for people who have not experienced this duality to question your loyalty towards one versus the other.
Right.
Only the people who have lived this life and they are deeply connected to two cultures, they know what I'm talking about. They know the sense of belonging and loyalty that you have towards both, which is, I don't ascribe an index to it. I mean, 60% here, 40% there. It's not that. I just give you a factual data and how much of my life has been, in the two countries. But America is where I got educated. It's where I got the opportunity to work, as you said, in one of the most American of Americans institutions. So it gave me all of that. I owe it. I owe it to that culture. I love that culture. And I love my home country, and I don't see any contradictions in those.
Even within the loyalty, as you know, there isn't always unity. And I want to ask you about our global Iranian community. I know you've said you're uncomfortable, by the way, with any kind of hero worship. And again, you've demonstrated your modesty already in this interview. But you are one of the most prominent names and voices in our diaspora. And you've talked about seeing how other communities help each other and their home base, if you will. Jewish Americans, say, helping out other Jews and Israel. And yet, for all of our wealth and education in the diaspora, the brain trust, as you've called it at times, we don't always do that. How frustrated are you by that? And tell me about the delta between pride and collective support in our Iranian community.
Yeah, so I think unfortunately, our country, home country, Iran, has been facing so many on top of what they're suffering under the current regime. There also, there's been floods and there's been earthquakes, there's been pandemic. And I have seen remarkable coming of together of people trying to raise funds for these causes. I've been involved in a number of them myself. And even in a more steady state, I'm involved with organizations that try to educate young kids who are bright, but their parents want them to come and go on the street and sell trinkets to bring an additional income home, and therefore they take him out of school. And you go tell the parents, how much this 9-year-old girl brings home. They say, $50. They say, okay, if we give you the $50, would you let her go back to school? And they say yes. And so I'm part of an organization that does that, and there's many different organizations and many people who are involved. But also the enmity that stands in between U.S. and Iran doesn't make it easy. I mean, the banks don't transfer money.
Right.
It's not easy to send money and, engage in commerce. So within the limitation, unfortunately, and hostility that exists between the two countries, there are people, who within the limitation try to help Iran. The unity that you talked about, which is lacking, it is a vast majority. I will hesitate to put a percentage on it. A vast majority of Iranians who live outside of Iran, I don't know, some estimates say 7-8 million people. In America, the estimate ranges between 1 to 2 million people. I know Toronto, for example, is has a very large population of Iranian-American.
It's exploded here, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So don't force me to bring proof. It's my sense that the majority do not approve of the current regime in Iran, and they want it gone. Not modified, but gone. And they want a secular democracy in place of it. But now back to your unity question, they cannot agree what form that secular democracy should take, and worse than that, and I face it all the time, it is not sufficient that you're against that regime. They want you to be against that regime in a way that they are against that regime, to fall behind their line. So that is why 40 years has gone by and nothing has happened, because people cannot unify. I mean, we say that the mullahs are ignorant, and I won't cite that notion, certainly. But somebody like Khomeini was clever enough, differentiate between being smart and being clever,
right.
Clever enough to unify people who were against the prior monarchy and unite them for his purpose. Now, of course, he betrayed all of them later, but nonetheless was able to unify them. We lack leadership that's able to unify.
But why are we, sorry to cut you off, but why are we so prone to, you've called it before, the my way or the highway attitude? Why are we so prone to that as a global community?
Jian, I don't think it is unique to us. I mean, I look at the polarization in American society, that is here as well. I don't know. But leaders can either try to unify or they can further divide people. But going back to your point about Iranians, I think we need a charismatic leader that will try to overcome this tendency by the diaspora, certainly outside of Iran. I think people inside Iran in some way are more unified in a way that they want this regime gone by any means possible. But in outside Iran, we're more engaged trying to pick our favorite government after these guys are gone and willing to fight over that, forgetting about the fact that these guys haven't exactly packed their suitcases ready to go. So the first job is try to facilitate their departure. And so I don't know. I think a charismatic leader could help reason with the different factions and try to unify them. But I just don't see it right now on the horizon.
You've made an interesting decision in recent years. I mean, while you were serving completely at NASA up until 2016, you stayed quite clear of politics. In the last few years, you've become quite vocal in expressing, for example, your dismay at the political situation in Iran and in the United States with Donald Trump as well. You've pulled no punches. I want to get to the kind of reaction you've received from that. But first, tell me about that decision, because it feels like you would need to have known that this is going to be a minefield to start opening up in terms of being open about your political feelings. Tell me about making that decision.
Yeah, Jian, the trigger point was a little bit earlier. I was so engrossed in my professional life and the social media wasn't what it is today, and that I sort of steered clear of politics until 2009. 2009, when the Green Movement happened, and because of the social media, I saw how the young people with nothing more than T-shirt and a rock to protect them were getting massacred. It just awakened something in me. And I started getting a lot of messages because now social media shrunk the world, so I was in contact with young people in Iran. Why don't you say anything? Why don't you take a position? And at that time, I heavily aligned myself with what came to be known as the Green Movement without ever mentioning who were the Aghay Karoubi, who was the other guy, Mousavi. Without ever mentioning, because my support was not for them. My support was for the fight of the Iranian people for democracy. So I aligned myself with the Green Movement. And that sort of started at 2009, so it's been sort of 11 years that got engaged in political discourse. And then later, I did make what I look back right now, in retrospect, probably not the right thing to do, is that in the last election, I was so intent, basically through urging of friends and family in Iran, that said if Raisi becomes president, our life would be even more miserable than it is today, that he should not become president. And for me, it was very obvious. If you don't vote, basically, you guarantee that he would become, because he was the selected candidate of the Rahbar, that he would become. So I urge people to vote. So I've gotten a lot of backlash on that one. How could you be against the regime but still urging people to vote? Because as we can see, Rouhani has proved yet again that there is no differentiation between these Ahunds. They're all the same. And how can you have done that? And so once again, I was, in favor of people's lives not getting even worse than what it is today. But apparently it has made no difference. And that has sort of solidified my current position, that this whole regime in its entirety, this whole apparatus in all factions, whether Islah Talab, whether it is whatever they call the Usul Gara or whatever else, that the entire thing needs to be dismantled and replaced by a secular democracy. But if you have time to talk about it, there is another thing, unfortunately, aside from our disunity, another thing which prevents us from finally waking up from this nightmare. And that is something which has been in our Iranian DNA for now, a couple of centuries, not unique to current time. And that is that we believe unless somebody else wants it, some other force outside of Iran, be it, and in different times it has changed, be it China, be it Russia, be it England, being America, unless they wish it, nothing will change in Iran. So we're always are looking for a savior, which never comes. So we really, if we are to wake up from this nightmare, we really need two things to happen. One is the unity that you talked about before, all pulling in the same direction. And the second thing is stop looking for this, it's the same thing as people in Iran who have this imam, apparently, which is down at the bottom of a well, and they're waiting for him to come out and spread joy and peace around the world. It's the same thing. It's the same superstition that the religious people have when they are waiting for, whether it be Trump or be anybody else, to come and liberate Iran, which will never happen. So without these two, to be believing in your own will and ability to make change. And without uniting, they've been around for 40 years. They'll stay around another 40.
Firouz, tell me about the backlash and how it affects you. One thing that we do have trouble with in our community, in our diaspora, and we've touched on it many times on this show already, is just sitting across from each other and talking, even if we have profoundly different opinions about how the regime must change or how that change should be prosecuted, etc. It's a difficult. Banafsheh Akhlaqi was on this program, and she said, look, the definition of democracy is just let's sit and actually talk to each other. But for a number of reasons, some of which you've cited, tensions are high, and people's opinions are that my way or the highway position that does sometimes prevail. It prevails depending on which guest we have on each week. We're labeled one show or another, sometimes completely contradicting each other. So you were this guy for many years, I can only assume, who was the NASA guy that everybody in the global community, Iranian community, loved and adored. And then all of a sudden, as you start taking opinions, political opinions, be they about Iran or be they about Donald Trump, etc., you start hearing from people. What has that been like for you?
So, Jian, first of all, you have to, you cannot step into the political arena without developing a thicker skin. I was deeply hurt. Right? Partially because of what you said I was not used to. Maybe I was spoiled by the love and respect that I had received, many of which, by the way, was exaggerated and deserved, I'm sure. But the assault and how vicious it was caught me by surprise. And this labeling that that is the sickness right now in our diaspora. It is to, and by the way, the social media is a two-edged sword. It allows a lot of opinions to be aired, but also it allows very easily, with impunity, to label people.
Yep.
Okay, so people come and you say, Firouz Naderi, a stooge of the Jamhuri Islami, which just on the face of it would sound stupid. Anyone who hasn't gone back to Iran, even when my mom passed away, I couldn't go back to Iran. And I've been warned that all my communications is being monitored by Jamhuri Islami. And every fiber of my body rebels against this regime. But nonetheless, it doesn't cost anything. You just come and you say, he is a stooge of the Islamic Republic. Or pick an institution that allegedly is storefront for them, the NIAC, which I don't have any independent way of knowing whether they are or not, but without any proof, evidence, you're engaged in NIAC, you are part of NIAC, you're on the board of NIAC, which I've never ever been. You deny it maybe once or twice or three times, and then you figure it's useless. It's trying to stick your finger, in a hole that's gushing water. You give up. But nonetheless, I still look across the three platforms where I am, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The percentage of people who come and sling mud relative to other people who still, they say, stick with it, please be our voice, speak, don't mind these people. It's still a small percentage. It's 5 or 6% of the people who come on my platforms. They, it hurts. It hurts, but you can't do anything about it, so you don't dwell, and you just hope that rational people would see that is the case. And the thing with the social media is that you read something without trying to ascertain its validity, you repeat it. And then somebody else repeats that. And so when I have confronted some people where I thought they were more educated, because the uneducated ones are very easy to spot. They always invoke body parts below their belt, and so you dismiss those as they are in a gutter. But the people who appear to be more educated, you say, can you show me one evidence? What you say, I mean, based on what do you say that? And so we go back and forth, and it ends up saying, okay, I apologize. Except I don't want to spend that much time, confronting these people. So by and large, I try to ignore it and say, and state my opinion, and not be bullied by these people, because the more that you respond to them in some way, you elevate them, and they're not worth it.
You've been so generous with your time. Let me finish off with a couple of questions that are zoom out questions about what you see and what you have felt that can come in the future. This program at its heart is about, we say conversations from to and about the Iranian diaspora, is about people of Iranian descent. Of course, it's for more than just people of Iranian descent, but for those of us who are of Iranian descent, it matters what is happening in Iran. We can't let go of that. And as you've said in this interview, it's been a particularly disastrous year, dating back to the killing of protesters in the streets, to the Flight 752, to COVID. It has just been horrendous. Firouz, in many interviews, you have expressed your optimism and hope in the younger generations in Iran today. Where does that hope stem from? I mean, are you in touch with young people in Iran? Why do you feel so optimistic?
Even though it is really increasingly harder and harder to be, but what I have said, and I think it's hardly can be argued, that when we talk about the wealth of Iran, the assets of Iran, often people talk about the oil and gas energies, and we are number 3, 4, whatever it is that we are in the world, and other things, Bali, Pese, Khaviar, what have you. These are not, the real assets of Iran. The assets of Iran, it's the young people, and that's the future. That's the treasure, and ultimately, I think if something is going to happen, it's going to be because of them. I think older people are by nature conservative and stay home, and it is young people who are optimistic and idealistic and go and, in fact, sacrifice the most valuable thing that they have, which is their life. So I'm optimistic because of Iran's youth. It is educated. It is in touch, because of the social media. And at the end, if I hope that Iran will come out of this thing, my hope is, is the young people. It's not the wealthy person who sitting in Beverly Hills or sitting in Toronto or what have you, or Vancouver with ill-gotten wealth, and they're not going to do anything. They took the loot and they run away. So it is the young people. That's if I have optimism, it's because of that.
A final question. You've talked about how your experience in space exploration tells you that a unifying principle we can live by is that planet Earth is home to all of us. In other words, whatever else divides us, if we stand above and look back, we all inhabit the Earth as one. It's incredibly simple and yet such a profound perspective that we seem to have so much trouble with on this planet. What could we all learn from seeing things from the perspective of outer space?
Normally I end my lectures with one final slide, which is a side-to-side image of the map of the Middle East with all the borders and all the, havoc that's going on there. And the other one is the view of the astronauts when they look back at Earth and they see this beautiful, unified blue marble without any of those artificial lines that we have drawn on a map of the Earth. And we have found languages and religions and cultures and race, to separate us from each other. Yet, when you look at it from the space, Earth is home to all of these differences. And that's the only home that we have. So I think it is, you were earlier asking about the benefit of space exploration. It is this realization of unity, which I think is another byproduct of the space exploration. And that's the way we ought to view the Earth and view our place in it, and not by artificially drawn lines or geographical maps.
Firouz Naderi, it's been an unquestionable pleasure and an honor to get to do this with you. Thank you so much for doing this today.
Thank you, Jian. You're a very good interview, and it was easy to talk to you.
I hope to see you soon. Merci. Khudafiz.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. There you go. A conversation with the late Dr. Firouz Naderi, who we sadly lost this summer. He will be remembered, and his legacy lives on. And this is full time for Roqe for today, and full time for our Best of Roqe series. As we head into September, it's a brand new season of Roqe. We'll have our season preview show next Thursday, September 7th, and then our launch of a new season of Roqe with a big new edition on September 14th. That's a couple of Thursdays from now. In the meantime, you can visit all of our previous episodes and programming at roqemedia.com. Our videos, our funnies, it's all there. roqemedia.com. Thanks to the amazing team who put this show together and who put the Best of Roqe together all summer. Smart Pega, Talented Anahita, Savvy Rohan, Bearded Omid, Super Parisam, Methodical Kaveh, Sound Person Luis. Thank you to all of you out there for supporting us and sharing our content. Please subscribe. Find me on Instagram at Jian Gomeshi. Mizun Bashi.